If you're looking for a podcast that packs in sound property advice, as well as offering you an insight into making the world of property effective and ultimately work for you, you're in the right place. Hosted by Arsh Ellahi, the original property rebel. He's written an Amazon bestseller, created the Property Investor app, the UK's first, and is an experienced property mentor. More importantly, he talks the talk and walks the walk.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the Property Rebel with your host Arsh Ellahi, and in today's session we're going to be talking about the renters reform and what that means for you as landlords. Now, before we do that, I just want to remind you that this podcast is sponsored by the Property Investor app, and there are three ways to get involved. You can either go to the website, which is www.propertyinvestораpp.co.uk. Now, if you've got a smartphone, go to the App Store, type in Property Investor and download it from there. And finally, I know you all have WhatsApp. Why don't you join our WhatsApp community? Go into WhatsApp, look for communities, search for Property Investor app and join. It's completely free for you to do that. So let's get into it. Renters reform. If you're a landlord, if you're a property investor, you can't ignore the fact that renters reform has been a massive talking point for a number of months, if not years. And it is actually coming into play. So let me just tell you a little bit about what the renters reform is and why the renters reform has actually been introduced. Now, I've made a lot of notes, so apologies if I look a little bit to my left. Now, first of all, it goes without saying that over the last 20 years, the private rented sector has increased significantly, and millions more people now rent long-term just purely because house prices have increased, mortgages have become harder to obtain, and social housing supply has collapsed. So they're the three key reasons as to why we have become such a nation of renters. I'm not wrong in saying that the government are very anti-landlord. For years, they've made, or shall I say, they've put so many hurdles in place for property investors. They've wanted us to become a nation of homeowners. But what they've not understood is the fact that as a nation, we've not been able to save. And as a result of not saving, the cost of living is increasing. That's stopping us from saving. And it's not then allowing us to build a deposit to go and purchase our own home. Now, I'm talking generalization here. Now, let's look at what the renters reform is going to be doing. I'm going to give you the pros and cons. Now, I'm going to tell you about the theory behind it. I'm also going to show you the practicality behind it because, yeah, I appreciate that lots of property investors and landlords across the UK have really got themselves in a bit of a pickle about this. And when I look at things, I think, okay, I always think of it from a point of view, is this going to hurt me? And what steps can I do to put in place now that's going to prevent that? So first of all, what's coming in? So the biggest one is going to be that they're removing the no-fault evictions via this Housing Act of 1988 Section 21 notices. And what that means is that landlords will no longer be able to evict tenants without giving a reason. Now, I thought about this and I looked at my property business over the last 5 and 10 years, and I asked myself, over the last 5 or 10 years, how many Section 21 notices have I actually served? For those that are aware, Section 21 notice is a notice that you'd normally give to a tenant, generally on a no-fault basis. So this could be that you are looking to take back control of the property, you want the property back. It may not be the tenant's fault, or you may just want to give 2 months notice. Generally speaking, and I've got to talk as me as a landlord that's got multiple hundreds of tenants across the UK, I really only want to take back the property if there's an issue with the tenancy. So that could be that the tenant is not looking after the property. It could be that the tenant is not paying the rent for the property. So generally speaking, I always go down the route of the Section 8 notice. Now, people will always ask, why do I do Section 8 as opposed to Section 21? First of all, Section 8, quicker to proceed with, and more importantly, more grounds to be able to enforce upon. Section 21 is longer, and yes, It is almost like guaranteed that at the end of the 2 months you could get your property back, but subject to lots of other things that go on, whether the tenant plays ball or not. But with Section 8, providing that you've got your grounds in place, really it's quite an easy process. So does this bother me that they're removing the abolishment of Section 21 notices? Not necessarily. Should it bother you as a landlord? Or depends on what your motivation is. You've got to think, what's happened over the last 5 years? How many Section 21 notices have you actually issued? And if the answer is not many, believe it or not, it's not really going to bother you. Second point, which is quite interesting, is that the removing of the transition of short-hold tenancies, which is ASTs as we know it, to periodic tenancies, which is rolling contracts for new and existing tenancies. Now, historically, you probably issued your tenants with either a 6-month or a 12-month AST. And I understand why you've done that. You've done that just purely because you want the longevity of that tenancy. So you want to know that if you put a tenant in your property and it's a 6 month, you know that you've got almost like 6 months worth of rent coming in on the basis that they are going to pay you. Now, they're abolishing that and they're now making it so that all the tenancies are maximum 2 months, which means that ultimately a tenant could move into your property and then 2 months later, they could vacate your property. Now, as a property investor, you're thinking, in actual fact, now we're going to have a larger transition of tenants come in and out the properties. Now, that's the theory. Let's have a look at the practicality of how is that going to happen. Now, if I was a tenant and I'm moving into a property, would I only want to move into a property for 2 months? Not necessarily, unless you're a bad landlord, unless that your property is in bad condition. Why would you want to keep moving every 2 months? Because let's face it, there's costs associated with moving. You've got deposits, you've got rent in advance, you've got moving costs, you've got the utility changes. Let's face it, one of the things, broadband. If you're going to move into a property, are you going to get broadband? They're going to actually sign you up to a 12-month contract. This is just one little point, by the way. They're going to sign you up to a 12-month contract. Now, as a result of you moving every 2 months, are you going to be able to take that contract with you? That is yet to be seen, and that'll be an interesting point to see what happens there, because again, there may be penalty clauses for that. Very much like a mortgage. When you take a mortgage out and you've got it for a 5-year term, if you're changing it every year, you're going to hit a penalty clause. So, I mean, there are things in place that I don't think the government have really thought about, but I understand the rationale behind it. They don't want their tenants, or they don't want the people that are going to live in these properties to sign up to long contracts. But I don't understand, because this has been rules that have been for 20 years plus. I'm looking at my portfolio and I'm having a look at the standard duration of our tenancies. And I can say that on hand on heart, a lot of our tenants have been there circa 3 years plus. So providing that your property is of a decent standard, I always go back to a point of, is it affordable? Is it clean? Is it warm? Is it of a decent standard? 4 kind of top tips that I always, or kind of 4 points that I kind of always go back to. Is it affordable? Is it clean? Is it warm? Is it presentable? And if that's the case, I think we're offering a good product. So if you're offering a decent product at the right price and the right location, you should have no issue with retaining your tenants. On a positive point, historically, if I'd signed up to a tenant and he signed up to a 6 or 12-month AST, because that was a fixed period, that means that that tenant would not be able to leave, or I would not be able to get them out of my property within 6 or 12 months. However, now that we've only got a 2-month period, it means that if there is an issue, I can get them out quicker, which means that from my point of view, again, from a practical point of view, it means that I've now limited my risk. However, if we do our job correctly and we find the right tenants, in theory, that tenant should be with us a longer period. Now, if we find a bad tenant, it means that we can reduce our risk. So think of it from that point. I always try and find the positive out of every scenario. And when we look at the periodic period, I thought by reducing it to 2 months, it won't necessarily be a bad thing. If they want to move, let them go. There's no point keeping a tenant in your property is not happy where they're going to live. It's just going to cause you more issues along the way. Now, let's talk about the limits on rent increases. So you can only now increase your rent once per year and tied to the periodic tenancy changes. So now what they're saying is that you can only increase your rents, and it has to be within the market rents. So this part I get. Landlords across the country have been facing all kinds of increases in taxes, mortgage costs, utility costs, and naturally what they've done is that they've passed these costs on to tenants. And ultimately what's happened is that the cost of living for the tenant has hit to a point where it's almost becoming unaffordable. So the income is here, the outgoings is here. So therefore, if we go back to the whole government scheme, how is this tenant going to be able to afford to build a deposit when naturally they're just about living on a day-to-day basis? We always call it the hand-to-mouth, that every month you can see from a tenant's bank statement how they're living. Are they living within their means, or at the end of every month have they got something left over? If you have a look at a lot of your tenants' bank statements, which is one of the tests we actually do when a tenant comes to move in with us, we have a look at their bank statement and we're trying to get a good indication of the way that they live. If £1,000 has come in at the start of the month, by day 3 or day 4, how much have they spent? By half of the month, how much have they spent? Are they budgeting throughout the month, or has it all gone within day 5? This will tell you how your tenant's going to perform for you moving forward. Now, increasing rent naturally is something that we have to do as landlords, especially with all these costs that are increasing. However, if the whole market and the whole sector is increasing their rents, you could argue that you are increasing it in line with market demand. And it's the same when you sell a property. We've seen over a number of years that the prices have increased. So, give you an example. One house on the street, a mid-terrace house, is on the market for £100,000. He bought it at £100,000 a year ago. Now he decides to sell it a year or 2 years later. It's now worth £120,000. Now, if someone goes to sell their house on the streets as well, are they going to put it on the market at £100,000? They're now going to put it on the market at £120,000, which is now seen as a new market value. So you have to determine what is the market value. And you've also got to factor in what are you including within that rent as well, because obviously these are all benefits that you're adding in: council tax, water rates, electricity, gas, broadband, cleaner services. So you could put these in as additional services. So if you can't increase your rent, perhaps you add in a service charge. And these are things that I've thought about that we're going to perhaps implement if we find this as being an issue. So your rent is this, your service charge is this. Very similar to a block of apartments. When you purchase a flat in a block, you pay for the flat, and on top of that the management company will then charge you a service charge and ground rent for the upkeep of the building. So as landlords we could potentially do that as well. So these are little things that I'm thinking about implementing as we move forward. Now there's another one: restriction on banning of rental bidding wars. Now I don't think this applies to a lot of people, I'll be honest. I've never really been in a position where tenants have been in a bidding war for properties. Wolverhampton is a lovely place and it's a great place to build a business, and it's served me extremely well for 45 years. But I've never been in a position where people have been in a bidding war. I appreciate places like London where you probably got lots of people applying for the same property, especially in certain areas that they may get into a bidding war. But now the government said that has to stop. Now, what's quite interesting is the fact that the PRS, which is the private renters sector, that they're going to create a nationwide database of landlords and create almost like a tenant ombudsman and create almost what's considered like a decent homes standard register. Now, personally, I don't see that as an issue because I've been operating as a landlord for over 25 years. I'm not new to the scene. I've been on selective licensing registers. I've been on HMO registers. So for me, the only thing that I think it may do is it may increase. And again, this is yet to be determined whether there's going to be a cost by going on to this register. So as we know, when you do the private sector, or should we do selective licensing, there's a fee for that. Now, when you're going on to these certain registers, you have to make sure that all your paperwork and all your documentation is in order. So EPC, have you got your EPC? Is it up to date? EICR, Your electrical certificates, have you got those in place? Gas safety certificate, have you got that in place? Your insurance, have you got that in place? Is any works that's outstanding? These are things that happen when you go onto certain registers. So selective licensing, HMO. And again, I think what they try and do is nationalise this. But more importantly, this is also a way of the government generating additional income, because if there's a fee for that, fine. But there's going to be a massive backlog of putting all these people onto a register. So this could take years to roll out. And we've seen that by trying to implement certain things like this on a mass scale, give you an example, the EPC trying to get it up to a certain level will take a long time to happen. So again, we'll see what happens with that. Now, they're talking about timelines. When is all this going to happen? They're saying that the phase 1 is going to begin in the 1st of May 2026 for major changes, and further phases later into the decade. Now, we've gone through pretty much the points of what is going to be coming in for the main reform. Now, as a property investor, am I worried about this? There's nothing that's jumped out at me and thought, you know what, I've got to sell. I understand that for some landlords, this may be a push too far, but for me, it will only become an issue if we have low quality of stock, which I know we don't. So if there's low quality of stock, I can imagine that tenants are going to be jumping around all over the place. I can also imagine that now, if you're having to go onto the PRS register, the private rental sector register, and they're going to put you on a selective licensing style register, you're going to have to supply all your documentation. And again, EPC, EICR, gas safety, whatever it may be. And it could be that you're going to have to spend some money on bringing your properties up to a certain standard. And then you're going to start to think, well, okay, with that, now I can't increase my rent. My rent's going to be a certain level. I can appreciate that some of you are probably looking at it from a cost analysis point of view, think maybe this is one step too far. There's going to be more, and along with the register, there's going to be more intensive record keeping, stronger tenant protections, potential for more dispute and eviction complexity. I don't agree with the eviction complexity, just purely because if there is an issue now, you'll have to now go down the lines of Section 8 as opposed to Section 21. So it's definitely worth, for those that are listening to this, go and research Section 8 notices. More importantly, if you want help with that, a very good friend of mine actually runs a workshop on Section 8 notices, and he will show you how to create a Section 8 notice successfully so that every time you go to court, you get your judgment in your favour. So if you'd like to sort that, please feel free. Go to my website, www.arshellahi.com/contact. Send me a web inquiry to say, Arsh, I need some information on Section 8, and I'll forward you over the details. Just to conclude, is this the right time for you to sell? Lots of people will be thinking maybe this is the right time to sell, and I've seen that on property forums, lots of people are selling. However, am I going to be selling? No. Am I actually going to be acquiring more? Potentially, yes. But we'll see how that goes. So, guys, if you've got any questions, please feel free to reach out, say, Arsh, I'm worried about this. What is it that we can do? How can we do it? And, let's see how I can help you with that. But I really hope that this session has kind of just broken it down, because we all hear the theory of it. We need to understand what's going to happen on a practical point of view. And I'm hoping that in this session, I've kind of broken that down for you. So just to recap, guys, this podcast is sponsored by the Property Investor app. 3 ways to go and check us out. Website, propertyinvestораpp.co.uk. Go to the App Store, type in Property Investor and download it from there. WhatsApp, go and check us out on the WhatsApp communities by searching Property Investor. Now, for those that are on socials, go and check me out by searching Arsh Ellahi on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. And go and join my YouTube channel. So I'm uploading more and more content on YouTube under the handle of Arsh Ellahi. Really hope you've enjoyed the session. Don't be scared. Things come in, things go, and we adapt. Be like water, be fluid, and I'll speak to you very soon.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of The Property Rebel. Want to keep learning? Check out the other episodes on YouTube and dive deeper into the world of property investing with Arsh Ellahi.